What's up guys, and welcome back to another review of the Better Call Saul Season 2 Part 2. This is for episode 11, titled Breaking Bad. So the previous episode was very Gene-centric, and honestly this one was very Gene-centric too. There were only a few scenes that were taking place in the Saul Goodman's timeline. The majority of it was in the Gene timeline, so I definitely feel like we're getting closer to the end about his climax in his story, but also there's still some things that we are probably going to see in the Saul timeline to kind of just mesh those two together. And we see that from the very start of the episode when we get the cold open, and this is what seems to be a recreation of the scene in episode 8, I think, of season 2, where Saul is taken out into the desert by Walt and Jesse, and basically they're going to bury him alive or threatening him to do it. So it's been a long time since I've seen season 2 of Breaking Bad. I think I've said that before, but I had to take a little refresher after watching the episode just to see the scenes, just to see if it was different or not. But you could definitely tell it was a recreation just because of the increasing quality. Honestly, the cameras, the shots, the way it looked, everything looked really cool. It looked impressive compared to back in season 2 when the show was still in its infancy. Really, it didn't really have its uniqueness in these top tier, like, unique camera angles and stuff. It did have them, but not to this level. So we see a recreation here with, we see the RV rolling, we see the bullet holes in it, just giving us a big glimpse of what we might be seeing in this episode. With the episode being called Breaking Bad, this is what we probably have to expect for the rest of the episode. Now, taking us back into the Gene timeline, we see a present day Francesca, or Fran, and she seems to be living the dream after the whole climax of the Breaking Bad storyline. She's living with two younger guys, I feel like, who are just kind of smoking weed and putting their weeds and stems down the drain and blocking it up. I'm not sure if she's their landlady or what, but she doesn't seem to be in the most great financial circumstances after Breaking Bad, and she goes to a motel. She feels like she's being followed, so she's obviously paranoid about the events of Breaking Bad and still being in contact with these characters, and perhaps just being paranoid that she's going to get caught or busted. So Fran waits for a phone call she receives from Gene. So this is probably the first time they've spoken in over a year, and Gene kind of just wants the lowdown on what's happening. He gives her this really weird way of collecting a money drop. He's got a fish line attached to a ring pole in the desert under a rock, which is shaped like Alfred Hitchcock's face in a fez, he says. So this leads us to a bag of money. So he still has these little dead drops left around just to keep some of these people he's still in contact with happy over these years, to basically not rat him out. And the scene is pretty much Gene just kind of fishing for information about what's happening with some of his old friends like Huel and how hot they are to the police. And this is where Fran tells him that she's being followed and all of his funds and all of his bank accounts are being emptied, so everything's being watched, so he doesn't really have a leg to stand on. So I think this leads into where the rest of the episode goes, with Saul or Gene trying to kind of get some funds together. One thing that she does tell him is that she did get a phone call from Kim Wexler, so at least we know that she's alive, and the fact that she has access to a phone means that she's probably not a crackhead on the street. She's probably not addicted to meth, so that's a good thing, I guess. So we almost definitely will be seeing Kim again at some point. I'm not sure if it's going to be in the next episode or the finale. Gene and Kim will probably meet again. Let's say that it's going to happen at some point, I think. So somewhere deep down she still wants to know about Jimmy. She wants to know if he's okay, because she asks if he is still alive, and obviously that's just a common courtesy as someone who knows someone for a long time, but she still has these feelings for him deep down somewhere. So I can't wait to see them meet up together again and just see kind of how they've changed over the years and how their personalities differed in all these years. Perhaps Kim has a family and kids now, who knows. One tiny little detail that I did find quite interesting is the fact that the subtitles now say, I'm not sure if this has been like this all along, I've never noticed, but it said Saul when Gene was on the phone instead of saying Gene or Jimmy. So I'm just assuming he's back in the role of Saul Goodman at this point, and if that's a creative choice, then it definitely lets you know where his mind frame is and what his motives are and who he is right now. After this, he goes back in his car and then he decides to get back out and go to the phone booth again, and he calls Kim Wexler, and this is all done out of audio. You cannot hear what he's talking about on the phone, but he does not seem best pleased. It's a really well done shot because you can see just the traffic going by, and every time you're kind of like listening in to try and see what he's saying, a big van will go past and you can't hear. So we don't know what they're talking about. We don't even know if he's talking to Kim. He could be talking to Kim's mum or someone else on the phone who won't let Jimmy talk to Saul. I probably think that is the more plausible idea. I don't see why she would be so like angry with him on the phone after all these years. I don't know what's going to happen, but Jimmy is not pleased with this, and he ends up like booting through the glass window on the phone booth, which does relate to a scene later in the episode. So I think this might be his little push to being a break bad moment for him. I'm not really sure, but it happened last time. The whole relationship with Kim is what turned him into Saul, and if this is the nail in the coffin that's going to bring him back into being Saul, it could be a very miserable downfall for Jimmy, Gene, or Saul. So we were introduced again to Jeffy, and honestly I wasn't sure we were ever going to see him again, but obviously we are. So Gene is in Marion's house again. He's showing her cat videos on YouTube. Now I think this must be where the infancy of YouTube started and when it started to get big. So it's good to see where this timeline was rooted, I guess. So I think if this show takes place in the timeline of where the show ended, it would be about 2014, 13, something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but Marion is very pleased watching cat videos, and there's a few scenes throughout the whole episode where she's watching them. But the real thing is why he's here. Like I said, he's kind of broke bad again. He's been pushed into this lifestyle again after all these years of being held back and working in the Cinnabon. He wants to kind of get back into the swing of things, and he does that exactly by talking to Jeffy again and getting him back into a scam. Now it's not entirely told to us what this scam is going to be, which is a good thing in the episode, because it's one of those things you have to work out as you watch it, which is always the more interesting parts of the episodes, where you're kind of put two and two together to figure out what the hell is going on. And it seems that they are doing a taxi scam, with Jeffy being a taxi driver. We see that Saul or Gene or Jimmy is doing karaoke in a bar, and he looks extremely Ned Flanders at this moment, and he's basically drinking or not drinking with this guy called Alfred, I think, and he's kind of being Alfred's bitch. He's just doing all these little jokes and bets, and he's losing all of them because obviously he's trying to worm his way in as being this kind of sap who will fall for anything. It's a part of the whole scam, and he's essentially trying to get the guy drunk to send him in a taxi with Jeffy back to his house in order to rob him blind, to get all of his information from his bank details, his IDs, his bank cards, and his documents. And we don't really see how this completely plays out, but it's obviously some kind of fraud where Jimmy can make money out of using all of this information to kind of maybe empty their bank accounts and put it all into his own or some offshore account. So this is where we see him definitely slipping back into Jimmy territory, and it's good to see these episodes where he does these scams, because it's just a big fun experience just seeing it all unravel. And honestly, I wouldn't be mad if they did a sort of either a prequel show, which honestly they couldn't really do because he's so old as an actor now, but if they were to do some kind of Gene spin-off in the time period between this and Breaking Bad, where we just see him do scams, I would totally be down for watching that, because it's so fun to watch. We see the scam go down in its entirety, and we have Jeff's friend Buddy, who is the one doing all the dirty work. They put tape on the door so he can get in and essentially just get all of the information with the camera. So the best part about this is the fact that Buddy brings his dog along, and his dog is a really good boy. You can see there in the picture, he's just sitting there patiently in this guy's house. A little bit worried that he's going to leave dog prints in the house, but I mean, we probably aren't going to be that interested in seeing the downfall of these guys anyway, so let's just assume they get a clean break from this situation, especially for this good boy's sake. Now this is going to be the scene that most people are talking about in this episode, and I wouldn't actually say this is my favourite scene in the episode. And this is where we go back to the cold opening, and we see a new scene from season 2 essentially, where we see Saul in the RV with Walt and Jesse. We have Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul reprising their roles as Walt and Jesse here. And I mean, this scene takes place after Saul, I think, tells them that he wants to be their attorney and help them out. And I had to actually go back and watch this scene because it's, like I said, it's been such a long time, and it's really good watching it afterwards, because at the time I was thinking, are these scenes really necessary? But when you actually watch the scenes back, it really fills in the gaps and sort of creates this one big synergy between all these moments to create something which I will talk about in the ending of the episode. So I mean, it's always good to see them back in the role, even though it's really obvious that Aaron Paul is nearly 10 years older than he was in the final season of Breaking Bad, and this is from season 2, so honestly this is a long time ago, so he's aged considerably, but I mean, it doesn't look that crazy. I mean, he looked a lot older in El Camino, and also he does look a lot more like he did in Breaking Bad in this because he's slimmed down quite a lot. At the time watching it, I was just thinking, what does this scene really add? But I will go into that later on. But it's just good to see them back, good to see the set and just some of the little inside jokes about the RV kind of breaking down and overheating and just the little details really. They've done a good job of bringing back all these little fan servicey moments for people who love the show, because it is one of the most adored shows of all time, and seeing them back on the screen and just, it was good. But at the time I was kind of thinking, do we really need to see this? But I will go into that later on. And this scene actually led to probably my favorite shot. This is going to be my shot of the week, so it's more of a transition, but as the scene is ending, we see the RV pull out and it leads to the grave that Saul actually dug for himself, and we see it and it transitions to an image there you can see in the picture of Gene in his bed in present day inside the grave essentially. And obviously this is a big sort of metaphor for the fact that after this point, present day Gene is basically dead at this point. He's not been able to live his life, he's not been able to live anywhere near like what he was used to with all his money and his cash and his houses and assets. He's just a shell of himself living in this lonely house listening to a police scanner. So that's the kind of things I do love in this show. It's just the metaphors and the themes and the symmetry and the mirror images of previous scenes. I love all that kind of stuff. So this was like definitely my shot of the week. And if you've watched Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, you'll know they have plenty of montages throughout. And with this being Breaking Bad, the title of the episode, we get a sort of a cooking scene, but it's not like the ones we've seen previous with Walter either making meth or counting his cash and creating his empire. We actually get to see a scene of Jimmy concocting some more sleeping drugs for more scams, and this is a big montage where we see Jeffy and Buddy scamming a lot of different people and making a lot of money. We get the crawl space scene again, but instead of taking random things out, he's putting all his cash back in. So he's Breaking Bad at this point, so there's a lot of themes of symmetry with the title of the episode, which there always is. It was good to see a good montage of how this all works out, and just the creativity is always on top form. And this leads up to a final scam where we see Jimmy is in the bar with this guy. He's doing his usual routine. He has a plastic pipe up his sleeve, which leads to a water bottle down his pants, where he actually siphons out the alcohol. He does this to obviously stay sober while pretending that he's drinking along with the guy. And what's different about this final scam that we see is that the fact that this guy pulls out loads of medication and he tells Gene that he has cancer basically. And this is where his idea kind of goes downhill a bit, because we're assuming here that Jimmy is going to just pull out of this and just leave and quit while he's ahead, because I mean, he's going to be drugging a guy with cancer and then robbing him blind of all of his money, and that is an extremely low blow, and we don't really know if he does it or not at this point. It seems like he's in the mindset that he shouldn't be doing this. He actually takes the drink himself, and it seems he puts him in a taxi and leaves early. So we're under the impression that Jimmy has done the good thing here. You say good, but he's had a Jimmy moment, not a Saul moment, where he's kind of snapped out of him for, this isn't a good idea. This is a bad thing. This is gonna be an extremely slippy Jimmy moment. So another thing about that is obviously we just seen the scene previously where he was in the RV with Walter White while he was coughing up, so he knows about a character with illness, and this might actually be a thinking decision for him as well, where we know that he knows that Walter White has cancer, but he knows the things he's capable of and the things that he has done and will do. So that might give us an inkling into Jimmy's thought process during this meeting and whether he should go through with the scam or not. We have another Saul Goodman plotline here, where we see Saul on his masseuse machine, just like on the floor in his office, and Mike Ehrmantraut comes into the picture, and this is the first time we've seen him in this timeline, and he is there to basically give Jimmy information about some of his clients he's working on. So we get to see a little inside of how Saul's firm actually worked, where he's probably doing all this shady work, but he's actually using Mike to go out and investigate, to know that he's got a case that he's actually going to win. And this episode actually had a laugh out loud moment for me, where Saul was sitting on his masseuse machine and he tells Mike that he should use it, and Mike obviously does not want to partake in such thing, even though it'd be funny to watch. And then Saul tells him that he looks like He should use it because he looks like Frankenstein who's probed by aliens, which made me laugh. And this is where Saul actually starts asking questions about Walter White, because at this point he doesn't really know much about him other than he was an old client, I believe. This is where Mike tells him that he's a chemistry teacher, he's cooking with Jesse, one of his students, and you can just see that Saul's brain is ticking over here, and he's just thinking about how he has this meth that he's making that is doing words on the street. It's the hottest new thing. And you can see that his mind's going in overdrive about how he can kind of use him to make money and make success out of himself. I will get back into that towards the end of the episode, but it was interesting to see that he was prying into this information. You can just see that he wants to learn as much as possible about these two people because he sees some kind of potential in them for his own selfish needs as well as obviously business. And this is where Mike actually compares Walter White's blue meth to Betamax. He's just saying just because it's the new thing that's better than the VHS and more expensive, that it's a waste of time and a waste of money, because eventually obviously Betamax didn't do well because it didn't sell enough units because it was too expensive, and everyone just stuck with the old VHS. So I thought that's quite an interesting comparison that Mike made there. Coming close to the end of the episode now, we see that Gene is very displeased with the whole final scam, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen here, but it was revealed that he wanted to go through with it. He did send this guy with cancer on this road to being scammed out of all of his money and potentially dying from a drug overdose with all his mixed pills in his system. And I just thought this is where Gene is getting, he's pushed the mark now. He's overboard here. So all throughout this show, he's had moments where you really like Jimmy as a character, and you've seen good in him. And every now and again, he really shows you that he is quite manipulative and he's capable of doing horrible things, even though in his mindset it's probably logical, which it is if he wants all of his money. But at the same time, he definitely overstepped the boundary here, and you can see just by these two guys, Jeffy and Buddy, in the picture there, that they are not down for this, especially Buddy. He says his uncle or his dad had pancreatic cancer, and he's just not going to go through it. He's just not going to go through it, and Gene fires him. Essentially, he's going to get someone else to do it. In fact, they're going to do it themselves. So we've had all of these successive scams going well so far, and I think this is probably the time where something bad is going to happen, and his greed and his hubris are going to get in the way of things. And I mean, he's probably got it coming to him, honestly, if he's doing this to this poor guy who's essentially terminally ill. So we get to see his true colors in this one, even if it's just for a brief moment. It just gives us that reflective moment that Saul Goodman, Jimmy, Gene, is not entirely a good person. He has these bad traits, essentially, that come out to show us every now and again that he is capable of bad things. So Gene gets in his car with Jeffy, and they go to the man's house to rob him, and essentially he ends up having to break in through the window, and this is where the Gene scene ends. And this is actually a really cool transition as well, because as he's leaving the car to get into the guy's house, it transitions like really smoothly into this image of Saul. I'm sorry, the picture's up there, I haven't moved it, getting out of the car. So we get the Gene going back to the Saul, and we're left with a cliffhanger ending here where we see him approaching the high school where Walter White works. Now, this is another scene that I had to watch again on YouTube because, like I said, it's been years and years since I watched that season 2, probably since 2011, 10, something like that. So I had to watch this scene again, but this is the moment where Jimmy goes to Walter in school and reveals to him that he knows he's the teacher, and he gives him the idea that he's bigger than what he's doing right now. He has the idea that Walter White could be on top of the league in this meth business, in this empire. And with the episode being called Breaking Bad, I mean, with this pivotal scene here, I mean, the one in Breaking Bad, but obviously with what we've just seen with him with Mike and the idea that he's planted, this show would not continue much further from this point without this scene. Because without this scene where Saul Goodman instills the idea into Walter White that he's bigger than this and he has to go and work with Saul, which means he's working with Mike and potentially Gus to get his empire on the big scene, none of the events would have happened. He would have just stayed a small league meth cook and probably would have been killed out of competition by Gus's men just purely because he's on their turf and he's not working with them. So like I was saying earlier, how some of these scenes, especially the one in the RV with Walter and Jesse, didn't think they had that much of a place. They didn't really add much to it. But when you watch all of these segmented scenes, this one here, the one with Mike and the one in the RV, and you place them in between the scenes in this season 2 episode of Breaking Bad, it completely comes full circle, and you get to see how this show affects Breaking Bad and how Breaking Bad has affected Better Call Saul, to just complete this kind of circle of everything just falling into place. And this is essentially what this show's purpose has been all along. It's for us to get all the details all together, the backstories, all of the characters, the Salamancas, Gus's empire, and just have it all sort of fall into place. And I think that's where the show stopped being a spin-off and actually became a true prequel, because this story is just one sort of big timeline to me now. Everything has just been so perfect so far. I am wondering what we will see next in the show, if we're going to be going to see more scenes with Walter and Jesse, or is that going to be the final one? Because like I said, it's all been put into place now. I'm sure we're going to see more Saul Goodman in his timeline and more Gene, and with 2 episodes left, I mean, I feel like we've got to see even more pivotal scenes that are going to make these 2 shows sort of meld into one. We still need to see more stuff with Gus, I guess, and how he's involved. I don't know what to expect in the next couple of episodes. All I know is that I'm excited for them. If you have any theories about what you may see next, please let me know. I do not watch the promos, I'll say that again, so please don't say anything about the promos for the next episode. The only thing I can think of right now is that Jimmy is going to get enough cash to head back to Albuquerque. He's also going to probably meet up with him again at some point. His Break Bad moment is probably going to be the end of him being in secrecy. I'm hoping we get to see some other characters maybe come back. Maybe we see Huel or Kubi, I think his name is, or some of the other the characters that we haven't seen for a while, just to give us a little bit more of a climax on where they are now. Maybe even Skinny Pete or something like that. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will be back again with part 12 next week. It won't be up as quick as this one because I'm back to work, but I will try and get it done as quick as possible. So yeah, if this is your first time checking out the channel, please subscribe and you will be notified when the latest video goes live, and hopefully you guys are back to discuss more of Better Call Saul as we come into the final 2 episodes. So see you guys next time.